of the Always Believe House. Today, we're going to do something that's monumental. On my forms I have for my students to fill out, each day there's a different question. On Monday, it's like, what was the favorite thing you did this weekend? And some of y'all are writing in, I drove a car for the first time. Wow. Today, you're going to graph a parabola for the first time. Wow. And you'll never ever forget it. And it was with Mr. Tubes. Just like driving a car. So a magical whiteboard appears, and let's start graphing these parabolas. Like, what is a parabola? Well, you're about to find out. Okay, let's look at our paper. We've been factoring these things called quadratics, right? The graphs of these quadratics are called parabolas, and calculus is basically the study of these curves, okay? These curves make your cell phone work, okay? Without what we're doing today, none of this electronic stuff would work, okay? That's the engineering's based off of this, okay? So let's keep going. All quadratic formulas are written in the form ax, and let me put this in red, ax squared plus bx plus c. So when we factor that, this is what we were teaching you to factor, right? And you got two factors, okay? Those factors are extremely important, and we'll get into that in the next unit, okay? When you graph a quadratic equation, it creates a U-shaped curve called a parabola. Okay, not parabola, it's called a parabola, okay? Now then, the types of parabolas. There's two major types, okay? Now then, we're going to graph of these and figure out what the difference is. So let's graph x squared plus 2x minus 5. So I'm going to go to my calculator, hit the home screen. If you don't have a calculator, you need a calculator. Contact your teacher. There's a calculator form, and it gives the instructions on how to download, or you need to pick one up from the library and pay a nominal deposit fee there. You get your deposit back when you turn back your calculator. But we're going to graph, so hit B. And now then, to get the graph up, make sure you're doing this the first time. Hit menu, graph is 3, and then function is 1. Once you do that one time, there's a shortcut. And we're going to graph x squared plus 2x minus 5. So x squared plus 2x minus 5. Hit enter, and wow. You got a curve called a parabola. So far, all the graphs you've been graphing have been straight lines. When you put an exponent in the equation, it's going to curve the line. This curve right here is called a parabola, okay? And it's the graph of a quadratic equation. Now then, this is important. We want to find the bottom of this curve. So I'm going to show you how to do this, okay? Please, please, please stay with me. Hit menu. Where does it say trace? It says trace at 5, so type in 5. Then you're going to type in graph trace, 1. Now then, when you graph trace, you're only going to hit the left and right arrow button. If you hit the up or down button, it's going to take you off the graph. Notice that it starts at the Y-intercept, doesn't it? Every time you go into graph trace, it's going to start at the Y-intercept. So that's 0, -5, and I need to go left to get to the bottom. We want to get to the bottom point or the top point. So I'm going to hit the left arrow button, and notice when I get to the bottom, it's going to say something special. It says minimum, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Look to the right, the ordered pair is -1, -6. So let's go back to our equation, and we're going to rough graph it. So -1, -6 is somewhere down here, and I'm going to put this right here and write the ordered pair, and then the Y-intercept was -5, and then I'm just going to draw that curve, right? So I have my vertex and my Y-intercept on this graph, right? Now then, let's go. Well, this point right here, the bottom of the curve is called the vertex, okay? Why don't we write that down? And this right here would be the Y-intercept. Later on, we'll get this point and this point. Those are called the zeros, okay? So we need to know what the zeros are, the Y-intercept, the vertexes, and that vertex is real special because there's a lot of stuff that works with that vertex. Now then, let's graph the other one. We're going to graph negative x squared plus 3x plus 7. So let's go back to the calculator. We need to delete this graph. So think of something bad, like, well, I'm going to get some Oreo cookies today. Oh, okay. My wife says I can't have any, but I'm going to get some. So anyway, let's get going. And I'm going to hit delete 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And that deletes the graph. So hit enter. Now then, since I've already graphed it once, I can just hit the tab button. When I hit the tab button, it brings up a function again. If you graph something different than a function, if you hit tab, it's not going to work that way. So make sure you graph it once and just hit tab. And then we're going to do negative x squared plus 3x plus 7. So negative, make sure you hit the negative button, x. The x squared button is to the left of the 4. That's the easiest way to get an exponent of 2. And then plus 3x plus 7. So plus 3x plus 7. I think that's right. Plus 7? Yeah, plus 3x plus 7. So negative x squared plus 3x plus 7. Hit enter. Wow, I got another parabola. Notice this parabola is opening down. It has a top instead of a bottom. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to graph trace. So hit menu. Graph trace is 1. And then graph is 1. Menu 5, 1. And it gives me Y-intercept of 0, 7. So that's an important point, 0, 7. Now then the top is to the right. So hit the right arrow button until you get to the very top. Don't hit it real quick and boom, there's my max. Notice my max is 1.5, 9.25. And why is it the max? Because it's at the top. The minimum will be at the bottom. The maximum will be at the top. The calculator will tell you if it's a max or a min if you're using graph trace. So now then, let's go back here. So I need my y-intercepts at 7. And this point was what again? It was 1.5, 9.25. So 1.5, 9.25. And then the parabola looks something like that, right? Okay. The important points to know, this right here, remember, is the vertex. This is your y-intercept. And these points right here, where it crosses the x-axis, are the zeros. Those zeros are really, really important when we get later on in math, okay? So let's go to the next one. If A is positive, the parabola opens up, okay? And it has the vertex is a minimum. If A is negative, the parabola opens down. If A is negative, the parabola opens down. Okay? And the vertex will be called a maximum. The vertex will be called a maximum, okay? So let's go to the axis of symmetry, okay? The axis of symmetry is the line that cuts the parabola in half. That right there would be called the axis of symmetry. I don't like this worksheet because there's not a lot. On this one right here, the axis of symmetry would be this, okay? So your axis of symmetry goes through the vertex, and if you were to fold the parabola over, it would match up. The parabola is going to be symmetrical. Okay? So I'm going to go down here and draw an axis of symmetry. Okay, so let's draw, wait for this to clear up. Let's draw an XY axis. Let's just draw a parabola. And I'll draw the parabola over here like this. The axis of symmetry goes through the vertex, and it cuts the parabola in half. That is the axis of symmetry, okay? The axis of symmetry is also going to be this right here. It's going to be the x-ordered pair of your vertex. So the axis of symmetry is the vertical line through the vertex, and it splits the parabola in half. You're learning this next unit. It's going to be a lot easier. It's a lot of vocab, but you got to know the vocab, and you got to know how to use the. You have to know how to use the calculator, and it splits the parabola in half. The formula for the axis of symmetry is negative b over 2a, and we'll get into that, okay? So this problem up here, do y'all see the vertex right here, negative 1, 6? The axis of symmetry, the AOS, is x equals negative 1. On this one right here, the x ordered pair is 1.5. The axis of symmetry would be x equals 1.5. So whatever the vertex is, that x ordered pair is going to be your axis of symmetry. That's where the vertical line is going to cut through the parabola in half, okay? The y value will be your max or min, okay? So the vertex, y'all write down x comma y. This right here, now then your vertex later on, let's do this. Your vertex later on in this unit will be called h comma k, okay? This right here, if you put x equals h, is your axis of symmetry. This right here is going to be your max or min every single time. So your vertex gives you your axis of symmetry, and it also gives you your max and min, and the vertex is known as h comma k. We'll get into this later on in the unit when we do a vertex form of a parabola, okay? Okay, with the vertex, so the vertex is the bottom or top of a parabola. It's the bottom or top of the parabola. It's where the parabola changes direction, okay? When the vertex is the lowest point, it is called a minimum. And the parabola will look like this. That's the minimum. If it's at the highest point, it's a maximum. And the parabola will look like this, okay? And the top part right there would be your maximum, okay? So let's get going, okay? Oh? Uh-oh. Okay, we're right here. This is going to be kind of a long lesson, so bear with me. Okay, really quickly. Write down A, just on this one, write down ax squared plus bx plus c. And then on the bottom, put A equals 1, B equals 8, and C equals 15. That C is important. This right here will eventually turn into the Y-intercept, okay? You'll learn that when we graph these, okay? Now then, the axis of symmetry formula, remember, it's negative B over 2A. We're going to graph this, and I'll show you that it works, okay? So, our A, draw negative fraction bar. The B is 8. And then 2 times the A is 1. Negative 8 over 2 is going to be negative 4. Okay? I'm sorry. It's going to be x equals negative 4. Your axis of symmetry is always written as a line. Okay? That formula is on the formula chart. Now then your vertex. Let's do this. Let's graph the line. So we're going to go to the calculator. You're going to graph these a lot. Okay? So we're going to hit delete, delete, delete. Delete the graph. Then we're going to hit tab. We're going to do a lot. This is going to take a while. And we're going to graph x squared plus 8x plus 15. So x squared plus 8x plus 15. Did I do it right? 8x squared plus 8x, that's it. Hit enter. We have this parabola. Now remember, we're going to graph trace, so menu, trace is 5. Graph trace is 1. And notice my y-intercept 0, 15, which is that C. Remember I said the C would be your y-intercept? The 15 is a y-intercept. Now then keep hitting the down button until you get to the bottom of the graph. And right there it was there. And notice it's negative 4, negative 1, which is exactly the ordered pair we got, wasn't it? Okay, so let's go back to here. And now where vertex is going to be negative 4, negative 1. This right here will turn into the axis of symmetry. And I'm going to abbreviate that. This right here, the graph opens up. That's my minimum. Okay, and the sketch is going to look like this, right? So negative 4, negative 1 is right here, and the graph does this, right? That's all you need to do, okay? Piece of cake. This point right here was going to be 15, right? Okay, so you're just going to graph. You're going to graph the graph the parabola, and then get the y-intercept and the vertex. The vertex is -4, -1. So when you graph these, you're going to graph the vertex and then graph the y-intercept. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so -x squared plus 10x minus 23. I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to hit delete, delete, delete. Where am I at here? Delete, delete, delete. That deletes the graph. Hit enter. Hit tab. Now then I'm going to graph -x squared plus 10x minus 23. -x squared plus 10x minus 23. Hit enter. And boom, I got this graph, right? The top of the ordered pair is going to be right up here, but I'm going to hit graph trace. So menu, trace is 5, graph trace is 1, and notice 0, -23 there's, right? So that -23, if we go back here, this right here is going to be the y-intercept every single time in it. Now then, let's find the vertex, okay? So on this one, we're not going to do the -b over 2a. We're just going to trace to it, okay? So we're going to hit the right arrow button until we get to the vertex. Notice when you cross the x-axis, something special happens. When you get to the x-axis, it's a 0 in it. On this one, it's 3.59, 0. And we'll talk about how to get that answer later. Okay, but I'm going to keep going until I get to the top. And when I get to the top, it should say maximum. And boom, there it is. It's 5, 2 in it. So I'm going to go back to here. My vertex is 5, 2. That means my axis of symmetry is x equals 5. This right here would be my minimum or max because it opens up. And then I'm going to draw this. Okay, it crossed at -23. The top is over 5 up 2, 5, 2. And just draw a parabola that looks like that, okay? Doesn't have to be really fancy, okay? Now then, one more time, let's go back to here. And I'm not going to do this every time, but -b over 2a, negative fraction bar 2, b is 10, a is equal to -1, b is equal to 10, c is equal to -23. The c is going to be your y-intercept. And if you work this out, you get the 5, don't you? Or and the a is -1 in it. So 2 negatives makes a positive. 10 divided by 2 is 5 in it. So this formula right here will give you the x of the vertex every single time. And that's called the axis of symmetry. Now then, you can graph to it and trace it and get it really easy, okay? So that's the way we're going to do this. Let's go to the next one. Okay, before we graph, write down a equals 3, b equals -12, c equals 5. This right here is going to be our y-intercept, right? And it's going to open up in it. This 3, we'll learn later, is going to make the graph steeper. So this graph will be more narrow, okay? So let's graph it. I'm going to hit delete 3 times. 1, 2, 3. This lesson will take a while, okay? Hit enter. And then hit the tab button. And then I'm going to go back. 3x squared minus 12x plus 5. 3x squared minus 12x plus 5. 3x squared minus 12x plus 5. Hit enter. I get this graph. I'm going to go to graph trace. I should start off at 0, 5, right? So menu, trace is 5. Graph trace is 1. Notice 0, 5 is my y-intercept. Hit the right arrow button. I get to my 0. Notice the 0 is a big decimal. We'll talk about that. Okay? And then keep hitting the right arrow button until you get to the bottom. And boom, there's my minimum. My minimum is 2, 7. So I'm going to go back to here. My vertex is 2, -7. This right here is my axis of symmetry in it. X equals 2. This right here would be my minimum. Okay, I'm going to go over here and sketch it. So 2, -7 would be like down here. Put 2, -7. The y-intercept was 5. And then just draw the curve, okay? Doesn't have to be fancy. Ho, 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 ho. Let's keep rocking and rolling, okay? This is tedious, okay? So I'm going to do a few more of these because this is just going to take forever, okay? we'll post the key so you can make sure, okay? I do not want to spend 40 minutes of your time on this, okay? So let's go, we'll do number 4 and 5, okay? So really quick, this is important. Underneath, let it clear up. Write down A equals 4, B equals 8, C equals -1. Remember, your C is going to be your Y-intercept. So when we graph this and hit graph trace, 0, -1 is where we're going to start off. So let's go to the calculator, hit delete, delete, delete. Okay, hit enter. Then hit the tab button, and then we're going to graph 4x squared plus 8x minus 1. So 4x squared minus 8x plus 1, 4x squared plus 8x minus 1, plus 8x minus 1, plus 8x minus 1. So 4x squared plus 8x minus 1, I'm going to hit enter. And notice when I hit graph trace, I should start off at -1. So hit menu, trace is 5, graph trace is 1. Remember, you only hit the left and right arrow buttons, and we start off at 0, -1. The bottom of the graph is to the left, so I'm going to keep hitting my left arrow button until it says min, and right there's my minimum. It's -1, -5. That's my vertex. So go back to here, -1, -5. This right here is my axis of symmetry, right? And then the -5, it was the minimum. The graph, the calculator told you it was the minimum, right? So let's go over to here. We're going to graph -1, -5, which is like right here. Put -1, -5. The y-intercept was -1, and the graph did something like that, right? Oh, piece of cake. I'm going to graph one more for these because this takes a while, okay? Kind of tedious. The more you do it on the calculator, the better. Let's go to number 8. Notice on number 8, A is -1, B equals 4, and C equals 0. Notice the y-intercept is 0. This will go through the origin, won't it? Okay, so this parabola is going to go through the origin, and it's going to open down on it. So let's graph it. Okay, so we're going to go to the calculator, hit delete, delete, delete. Okay, hit enter, hit tab to graph, and it was x squared, -x squared plus 4x. So -x squared plus 4x, hit enter. It should open down, and it should go through the origin. And it opens down, and it goes to the origin, doesn't it? So when I hit graph trace, we should start off at 0, 0, and we need to get this top point going. So hit menu, trace is 5, just hit menu 5, 1, right? And graph trace is 1. And notice we're starting off at our 0, 0, 0. Hit the right arrow button till you get to the top. And the top, it says maximum. That makes sense because it's at the top. And 2, 4 is the vertex. So we're going to go back to the parabola. The vertex is 2, 4. This right here is my axis of symmetry, which would be -b over 2a. Now that I'm going to go over here and graph 2, 4. 2, 4 would be like right here. Put it above. It went through the origin, 0, and then just do that, right? Ho, 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 ho. Okay? You should easily be able to go through and finish this up, turn it over, and you should be able to answer the questions, okay? So you should be able to finish this up on your own. Y'all, please listen. This is tedious. You'll get quicker on the calculator. This is kind of hard for me because I'm having to switch screens. Same thing for you if you got a calculator or phone. Try to do, like, watch it on the phone and then maybe use the calculator on the computer. However you want to do it. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. You learned a lot about parabolas. Remember, a -x squared is going to go down. A positive x squared, it opens up. If it opens up, it has a minimum. If it opens down, it has a max. And you learned that the axis of symmetry is the vertical line that cuts the parabola in half, and it's the x value of your vertex. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Remember, you are amazing. You are created to do wonderful things, and you are awesome.